I think that what we're lacking is a fierce sense of urgency. We don't have time at all. We don't. If we're driven by data in every aspect of life, we would not at all be in any way Pollyannish or complacent about anything. We don't have time. We don't. Just think of the fact that when we were in government, we had the NES document. There was consultation. The government that followed did Vision 2020. Am I correct?
Yes.
Pardon?
7-point.
7-point agenda.
7-point agenda, yes.
Then the one that followed it said transformation. Now we have the ERGP, and yet you see palpable tension in the land. You see serious dissatisfaction. You see the semblance of social dislocation. That is saying to us that we have maxed out on our failure. We're now at the region that I call the unsustainability of failure. This failure cannot be sustained. So the fierce sense of urgency that must underpin the way that we're looking at the challenges we're dealing with should factor into the speed with which we are identifying the obstacles to our growth, our development, and our shared prosperity. And what would this include for me? Number one, right now, a lot of the political class are back again, leading all the kinds of call for a political discussion. I don't mind a discussion. It's very necessary in order for us to build that bedrock of shared vision on which we would drive. That's broader than doing the ERGP. But it cannot be the same political conversation where a few political class members feel satisfied with whatever has been agreed amongst the political class and they say everything is fine. No, everything will not be fine by repeating the same kind of political conversation that does not anchor itself in a developmental objective that says we must develop a country where we have shared prosperity.
Right.
Which therefore means this country is ripe for a conversation. But the conversation must be about the economics of a functioning Nigeria. Because a Nigeria that functions economically is a Nigeria that gives everybody a stake in it. When people feel a sense of stake, there is no exclusion. When people feel a sense of stake, you basically mobilize everyone to the level of productivity that they can generate. For as long as we don't do this, what we would have would be occasional improvements, and we think we're fine, but look at our data. Our data tells us that every year, 3 to 4 million young people enter the unemployment market, the labor market. Only 10% of them will be absorbed because the economy is not expanding enough. Even in the seasons of high growth, it was not structurally shifting enough to absorb that kind of population. Our data tells us that compared to a country like Singapore, at more than 92 of literacy, what you call the knowledge quotient, we are still at a level of about 52. That's such a wide gamut. Without that knowledge quotient of a stock of people with knowledge, it's going to be difficult to make this country as productive as it should be. You look at what we have produced with all the factors that we have available to us. The growth that comes from, your factors and frontiers of possibilities that we have. It gives us a GDP per capita by today's rate, maybe about $2,400. Compare that to Singapore at almost $60,000. Then you say to yourself, these factors that create this divide, can they not be addressed? And that's where the conversation becomes absolutely necessary. Because you see, the color of poverty of the woman who is deprived an opportunity in Borno State is the same color of poverty of the man in Bayelsa State, or the young girl in Newi, or the elder woman in Ibadan. So that if we looked at over 100 million of Nigerians who could be lifted out of poverty, still being in poverty, we cannot at all not have a fair sense of urgency. The fair sense of urgency would mean that we discuss even the most painful of things. We must discuss our failure. This failure is too bad. We can't, you see, the diplomacy around failure must end. So we discuss our failure and why we must stop failing. Then we say, is it better to be small units with borders or to be a large population that works? Data tells us that it is better to be a large population that works. If it were not so, Rwanda would be an amazing economic magnet, because they've done, on the economic side, they've done a lot of things right, but it's still a small country. It can't pull it. But we can. But we must be a country. We must be a country that works. And so that conversation as to how to make this country works is a conversation that's not between the private sector and the government. It's a conversation amongst Nigerians, real Nigerians.